Good evening. It's Thursday evening, April 30th, and this is Ben Tafoya with another episode of 5 o'clock macro. Today, I wanted to spend some time talking about additional economic statistics that came out today. These are related to economic activity in Europe. And what we saw today is that the Eurostat agency, the EU statistical reporting group, published the Q1 flash estimate. So this is their first estimate of the first quarter economic activity. So it's released just a day after the US release. And they're showing a decline of 3.5% for the 27 EU countries. So if we remember back to another horrible story, the EU lost a country when the UK did Brexit earlier this year. So there's some, you have to be careful in looking at European statistics, whether it's the 27 or the 28 countries. These are 27 countries for the EU. And the decline that Europe measures is a 3.5% decline this quarter from the previous quarter in economic activity. For the Euro area, so it's a subset of European Union countries, use the euro. So those countries saw a decline in economic activity of 3.8%. From the fourth quarter of 2019 to the first quarter of 2020. Now, discussing these statistics relative to the US is complicated. And it's complicated by the fact that Europe and the United States measure the change off a different base. They add up economic activity the same way, but they use a different mechanism to talk about it. So US yesterday released its economic statistics on an annualized basis and said that 4.8% was the decline of GDP in the first quarter so far this year. Now Europe is saying, well, their decline will take the European Union-wide number of 3.5%. And you would say, oh, well, 3.5 is less than 4.8. So the impact in Europe is less. Well, that's not true because the percentage is off of a different base. And in fact, when you use the same reporting scheme, the United States saw a GDP decline of 1.2% from the first quarter compared to the fourth quarter of last year. And what Europe is saying is that they saw a 3.5%. So their economic activity dropped basically 3 times the amount that ours dropped during the first quarter. It is a horrific and record-shattering fall for Europe in the first quarter. So it's very important that folks understand the different way that the numbers are reported between Europe and the United States. So at some point we'll see the UK numbers separate. I can't imagine it's a very cheery proposition there either. Europe is reporting a very low rate of inflation during the first quarter, but it's spotty, and we're experiencing the same kind of thing here in the United States. So let me show you. These are the European numbers today, where overall Europe's rate of inflation for April was 0.4%. But as you can see, that's a net figure of a variety of measures. And there is a gigantic decrease, over 9% decrease in energy costs during the month of April. So food, um, uh, alcohol, tobacco saw an annual rate increase of 3.6% in April. So there's seems to be a boost in inflation in the European zone for food costs, which kind of makes sense. Food production in much of the world has been interrupted because of the virus. There's obviously the same level of demand, just in different sectors. This is food demand to be cooked at home as opposed to being prepared in institutions or restaurants. And there was a small amount of inflation in services. I don't have the details as to what that encompassed, but it just shows that the numbers are kind of all over the place, depending on the different sectors. The Europeans don't release the same level of detail across all of their countries that we release at once when we release our GDP statistics. So those will be coming in over time, but we could see the impact of the crisis on household consumption in the first quarter, which was down 7% in Spain, 6% in France, and 3% in Austria. These are compared to the numbers from the fourth quarter of 2019. And that just gives you a sense of the substantial drop-off in economic activity. Household consumption is a major driver of GDP everywhere. So the other facts of interest is that the total unemployment for March, so these numbers were just released for the Eurozone area, so the smaller subset of the European Union. March unemployment rate stood at 7.4%. By comparison, the U.S. unemployment rate in March was 4.4%. And we have seen since the March numbers were collected that there have been a massive number of unemployment claims in the United States. So again, in Europe, they're measuring March unemployment towards the latter part of the month. In the U.S., we measured March unemployment in the mid part of the month and made a big difference in the way that the numbers were prepared. But today, the government released in the United States an update on unemployment claims, where that last week another 3.3 million people filed for unemployment claims, which takes the U.S. total in the last 6 weeks over 30 million claims. Here in Massachusetts, where I live, there's a 1 week total of 250,000 claims for unemployment. It is by far the largest 1 week total that the state has ever seen. We have upwards of 800,000 people who filed for unemployment since this crisis began. This is a very disturbing and scary economic situation. And when I come back tomorrow, I hope to have some more details about what is being done and what more can be done to offset some of the tremendous amount of human misery that this crisis is causing. So a slightly shorter episode today, but I'll be back tomorrow with more discussion. Thank you.